If you look at penetration rates, a lot of countries over 100% right now, meaning that people have more than one device. You know, they may have a phone in the car, they may have a cell phone. There's a number of ways that can happen. There's also some argument that in the European countries, because of the GSM technology, people have many devices and they move their SIMs around between them. But interestingly enough, if you look at penetration, 80% for the United States, we're down there at number 33. So if you look at the European countries where they're at 100% or so, then we sort of drop down to about where we are, then they're the tiers below that. If you look at net subscriber additions, this is another way to say there's a lot of growth in the US market, because although China and India clearly have the most growth, and then it falls off pretty dramatically after that, the US is coming in there at number 6. Nowhere near like China or India, but still definitely a growth market. And if you can see that a number of the European countries, the EU, are way down there at, you know, less than 1%. If we look at average revenue per subscriber, you know, this is probably not a very surprising graph either. Basically having the European countries, the US, Canada, all right up there at the top, all somewhere around $50 a month US. Average monthly minutes of use. So the United States is a lot different than the rest of the world. We talk on the phone a whole lot more. Average person in the United States talks 823 minutes a month. And if you look at Europe, they're clear down somewhere around 200. So depending upon how you look at it and where you are, basically they talk about 1/5 as much as we do. Now, this, you know, is clearly driven by the pricing policies that we'll see, but I think it's important to realize that this is one of the reasons people talk about how Europe uses so much more data. You know, Europe has been ahead in the data area, and the US has been behind. Well, yes and no. A lot of it has to do with how the pricing is put together. Pricing drives people's behavior. And this chart really shows how the way we price in the United States with these tiered plans instead of by the minute really drives usage. And people talk right up to their limit. Where in Europe, they're pretty much charged by the minute, and so the behavior is much different. So you can sort of flip this around here, and you can say revenue per minute, or what does it cost per minute? And interesting, United States, way down there, 4 cents a minute. Look at Europe, 20 cents a minute. So guess what? It costs you 5 times more a minute to talk in Europe. So I think it's pretty clear that pricing strategies can dictate how people use devices, and we should never forget that. Okay, revenue from data. You know, relative to most of these charts, it's kind of flat. I mean, the US is there at about 14%. You see the guys at the top are up there about 30%. We never can figure out why the Philippines is always way up there. I'll bet you if we dug into the numbers, we'd find out it's all based on pricing. Leaders by revenue, just as we'd heard, Japan is number 2, US is number 1. Of course, if you added up all of Europe, they'd be there. Probably up there at number 1 without a doubt. I mean, look at this. UK and Italy, number 4 and 5. Add those two numbers together, you know, and you're above Japan. So clearly, the EU is by far the big worldwide leader as far as when it comes to revenue. A couple of numbers here in the US that are interesting. I don't suppose this is surprising to anybody to see that AT&T and Verizon have a little bit more than half the market, and they're about equal then with Sprint and T-Mobile coming. So this is the look if you look at it by the number of subscribers. Here's the look if you look at it by revenue. Verizon actually has more revenue than AT&T just by a little bit.